Selena woke up with a sharp pain in her side. She groaned, her eyes flickering open to a world that felt too strange. Her body was bruised, her clothes torn, and the ground beneath her was hard and cold. The smell of burning metal and something alien filled the air. She pushed herself up, wiping the dirt off her hands, only to stop when she felt something on her arm. She looked down and froze. A strange glowing mark was burned into her skin, an intricate symbol that pulsed with an eerie reddish glow. It was the mark of death. She had seen it before, on the faces of others who didn't survive. But how had she gotten it? Her mind was blank, struggling to piece together what had happened. The last thing she remembered was being on a routine mission, a simple trip to the outer reaches of space. But now, she was here, on a strange, rocky planet, and the mark on her arm told her everything. Someone had marked her, and it meant she was now hunted. She tried to stand but staggered, her head spinning. Her breathing was shallow, and her body felt as if it had been through a battle. The pain in her side worsened with every movement. She stumbled forward, trying to get her bearings, but the terrain around her was unfamiliar. Strange, twisted trees towered over her, their limbs stretching like skeletal fingers reaching out to grab her. The sky above was dark purple, with two suns setting on the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the land. Suddenly, she heard it, a low growl, deep and menacing, coming from behind her. Her heart raced. She wasn't alone. She spun around, her breath caught in her throat. A massive creature stood there, its glowing yellow eyes locked onto her. It had 6 legs, each one thicker than the trunk of a tree, and its body was covered in dark, spiked armor. Its sharp claws scraped against the ground as it moved closer, and a wave of cold fear washed over Selena. She had never seen anything like it before. Its growl rumbled through the air, shaking the ground beneath her feet. Without thinking, Selena ran. Her body screamed in pain as she pushed herself to move faster, but she didn't care. She had no choice. She had to get away from that creature, and she had to figure out why she had been marked. She ran through the dense jungle, branches whipping her face, her heart pounding in her chest. The creature was still behind her, its growls growing louder with each passing second. Her legs were burning, her muscles aching, but she couldn't stop. Not now. She stumbled, almost falling, but caught herself just in time. She heard the creature's feet pounding behind her, getting closer, closer. In a panic, Selena dove behind a large rock, hoping it would hide her. Her breath came in quick gasps as she pressed her back against the cold stone, praying the creature wouldn't find her. But she couldn't stay hidden forever. The sound of its growls faded, but only for a moment. Then, to her horror, she heard something else. A voice, low and calm, yet filled with an undeniable authority. "Run, little one," it said, and the hairs on the back of Selena's neck stood on end. The voice was not from the creature, but from someone else. Someone watching her. Selena's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't alone on this planet. She had been brought here for a reason. But what was it? Who was hunting her? And why? Her mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. Her body was exhausted, her side aching with each breath. She couldn't stay here. She had to keep moving. She couldn't let whatever was out there catch her. The mark on her arm burned again, almost as if it was alive, and she clutched it tightly, feeling a wave of dread wash over her. The voice spoke again, this time clearer. "The strongest hunter in the galaxy is coming for you. He will find you." Selena's blood ran cold. The strongest hunter. She had heard the stories whispered in the darkest corners of space. Kor. The name alone struck fear into anyone who heard it. Kor was a living legend, a hunter like no other. He never missed his prey, never failed to track them down. His reputation was terrifying, and he was the last person anyone wanted to face. But here it was. Her name, her life, marked by his symbol. She was his next target. The ground beneath her rumbled, and the creature let out a loud roar, cutting through the air. Selena didn't wait. She ran again, this time with a new sense of urgency. The hunt had begun, and there was no escaping it. She had no weapons, no allies, and no idea where she was. But one thing was clear: she had to survive. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a reddish glow across the land, Selena moved deeper into the jungle. She had no plan, no direction, but she couldn't stop. Kor was coming for her, and she didn't know why, but she was going to find out. She had to. Hours passed, and the jungle grew darker. Strange, glowing plants lit up the path ahead, casting eerie shadows. Selena's feet were sore, her body exhausted, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't let herself be caught. Not by Kor, not by anyone. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her arm. The mark, the burning symbol, was glowing brighter now, almost as if it was calling out to something. The air grew thick, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She didn't know how long she could keep running, but she had no choice. There was nowhere to hide. Kor was coming, and she was his prey. This is part one of your story. It creates Selena's heart hammered in her chest as she ran deeper into the jungle. Her legs were sore, her breath ragged, but the weight of the mark on her arm made her push forward. The creature's growl had faded into the distance, but she could still feel its presence, lurking just beyond the trees. Something in the air felt wrong. It was thick with tension, the kind of silence that only came before danger struck. She didn't know how long she had been running, but the jungle seemed endless. The strange, glowing plants lit her way, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. The more she looked at them, the more she felt like they were watching her, waiting. Every crack of a branch underfoot made her jump, and every distant sound sent chills down her spine. Why me? Selena whispered to herself, her voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. Why was I chosen? She had never been a target before, never hunted like this. She was just a simple soldier, a fighter sent to complete missions across the galaxy. But this was different. She had been marked, chosen for something much bigger than herself, and whatever it wasn't going to let her go. She stumbled through the thick jungle, pushing aside vines and low branches. The world around her felt alive, the air thick with an unfamiliar energy. It made her skin tingle and her senses sharpen. She knew she couldn't outrun whatever was after her, but she had to try. She couldn't let Kor, the strongest hunter, catch her. Not like this. Suddenly, a sound pierced the silence. A crack, like a twig snapping, came from behind her. She froze, every muscle in her body going still. The creature was close. Too close. Selena's heart skipped a beat as she turned to look over her shoulder, but there was nothing there, only the dark shadows of the trees. She strained her ears, listening, but the only sound was the soft whisper of the wind through the leaves. It was then that she heard the voice again, that low, calm tone that seemed to come from nowhere. It sent a chill down her spine. "He is coming for you," the voice said, just barely above a whisper. "Kor is already tracking your every move." Selena's blood ran cold. She looked around frantically, but there was no one there. No one in sight. The voice was all around her, as if the jungle itself was speaking. "Who are you?" Selena demanded, her voice sharp with fear and frustration. "Show yourself." The voice didn't answer, but as she looked down at her arm, she saw the mark glowing brighter. It was pulsing as though it had a life of its own. The sensation of being watched grew stronger, and Selena couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming for her, something much worse than the creature chasing her. With no other choice, she kept moving, pushing deeper into the jungle. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. The mark on her arm was a warning, a symbol of death. She was meant to be hunted, and Kor was the one who would do it. But why? Why her? She wasn't special. She was just a soldier, a small part of a much larger universe. The ground suddenly gave way beneath her feet, and she yelped in surprise as she tumbled forward, crashing into the soft earth. The jungle seemed to close in around her, its twisted trees and vines trapping her. She scrambled to her feet, but her body was slow, her movements sluggish from exhaustion. Her heart pounded in her chest as she glanced back over her shoulder. A shadow moved behind her, fast, silent, and deadly. She didn't have to look twice to know it was the creature, its eyes glowing in the dark. She had no time to think. She ran, pushing through the thick underbrush, her lungs burning with each breath. She could hear the creature gaining on her, its growl growing louder with each step. It wasn't just chasing her anymore. It was hunting her, tracking her like prey. And with the mark on her arm, she knew she couldn't escape it. Not alone. Her foot caught on a vine, and she stumbled, falling to the ground with a loud thud. Pain shot through her body as she rolled, trying to regain her footing. The creature was nearly upon her now, its claws scraping against the ground, closing in. Then, as if fate itself had decided to intervene, a loud roar echoed through the jungle. The creature froze, its glowing eyes wide with alarm. Selena didn't waste a second. She scrambled to her feet and ran in the opposite direction, her pulse racing. But the jungle was no longer silent. The roar had stirred something else, something bigger. She pushed forward, ignoring the pain in her side, her mind consumed with one thought: survival. She couldn't let the creature catch her. She couldn't let it take her. Not when there was so much more to learn. About the mark. About Kor. About why she had been chosen. She didn't stop until the jungle opened up into a small clearing. The sound of the creature's growl faded behind her, but she knew it wasn't gone. It was still out there, somewhere in the darkness, waiting for her. And then, to her surprise, she saw something else. A figure standing in the shadows of the clearing. A tall, imposing figure, clad in dark armor that shimmered faintly in the light. His eyes were hidden beneath a dark visor, but the cold presence around him was unmistakable. "You're not alone," the figure said, his voice deep and steady. "You're not the only one they've marked." Selena took a step back, her heart racing. She had no idea who this man was, but something told her he wasn't here to hurt her. Not yet. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaky but strong. Selena stood frozen, her heart pounding as the figure before her stepped closer. The name Kor echoed in her mind, a name that brought fear to every corner of the galaxy. The man's presence was imposing, his dark armor gleaming under the strange light of the two setting suns. He was everything the legends described, a monster, a living nightmare. But there was something different about him. Something she couldn't quite place. Kor's voice broke the silence. "You don't know me, but I know you. You're marked for death, Selena, and I'm here to make sure it doesn't happen." Selena's mind raced. She had heard the whispers. The stories of the galaxy's deadliest hunter, Kor, the one whom never missed. His reputation was the stuff of nightmares. But now, here he was, standing before her, saying he was here to protect her. "You're here to protect me." Selena's voice was laced with disbelief. "The same Kor who's been hunting me down." Kor didn't respond immediately. He just stood there, his cold, emotionless eyes watching her. For a moment, the jungle around them felt still, the tension hanging thick in the air. "You misunderstand," Kor finally said, his voice steady but carrying an edge of urgency. "I wasn't sent to hunt you. I was sent to protect you. There's a greater threat in this galaxy than you could imagine, and it's coming for us both." Selena's mind swirled with confusion. She didn't understand. How could Kor, the hunter, be on her side? The mark on her arm, the one that had sealed her fate, was a sign that Kor had chosen her as his next prey. Yet here he was, claiming he was trying to keep her alive. "You expect me to believe you?" Selena asked, her tone sharp. She took a step back, her hand instinctively moving to the hilt of her blade. "What's your game, Kor?" Kor's gaze never wavered. "There's no time for explanations. You're not just marked for death. You're a part of something much larger, something that could change everything." and those who have marked you. They want to use you as a pawn in a game of power and control. Selena shook her head. I don't care about their games. I just want to survive. Kor's eyes softened, just for a moment, before his expression returned to its usual coldness. Survival is no longer enough. You're caught in a web far bigger than you realize. And the only way out is to fight back. A cold wind swept through the clearing, and Selena glanced around, her senses on high alert. She could still hear the distant growls of the creature from earlier, and the feeling of being watched hadn't gone away. The jungle, once so still, now seemed alive with danger. Something was out there, something worse than she had yet faced. Suddenly, Kor stepped forward, his hand reaching out. Come with me. We have to move before they find us. And believe me, they will find us. Selena hesitated. Everything inside her screamed to trust no one. Not Kor, not anyone. But deep down, she knew he was right. She had no choice. She was already caught in something she didn't understand. She didn't know why she had been marked. But she needed answers, and Kor was the only one who seemed to know anything. Why are you helping me? She asked, her voice quieter now. Kor didn't look at her. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because there's no other choice. If we don't survive, the galaxy falls. Selena followed him, her eyes scanning the dense jungle around them. They moved quickly, not speaking as they slipped between the trees. Kor's presence was intimidating, but she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of safety when he was near. For the first time since waking up on this alien world, Selena wasn't entirely alone. But the danger was still there, lurking just beyond the shadows. As they moved deeper into the jungle, the sounds of the creature faded, but the silence was just as unsettling. Selena's mind raced. The mark on her arm burned again, a reminder of the hunt that had begun. What was it that Kor wasn't telling her? What was this greater threat he spoke of? And why had the universe chosen her to be a part of it? She glanced at Kor as they walked. His face remained unreadable, his movements precise and deliberate. There was no doubt he was a skilled warrior, one who could survive anything this planet threw at him. But Selena was different. She was just a soldier, no match for the likes of Kor, at least not yet. They walked for what felt like hours, the jungle never seeming to end. But eventually, they reached a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a large metal structure, half buried in the earth. It looked old, ancient even, but still intact. There were no markings on it, no signs of life, just an eerie stillness that made Selena's skin crawl. Kor stopped and turned to face her. This is where we make our stand, he said, his voice low and grim. Selena stared at the structure, unsure of what to expect. What is this place? Kor's eyes narrowed. It's a safe house, and we need to get inside before they find us. Before Selena could ask another question, a loud screech echoed through the jungle. The sound of something massive moving toward them sent a wave of panic through her chest. She turned to Kor, who was already moving toward the entrance of the structure. There was no time left for explanations. They had to move, and they had to move fast. Without a word, they ran toward the metal structure, the sound of pursuit growing louder behind them. The creature was close, and worse, Selena knew the mark on her arm meant more than she could possibly understand. She didn't know what was waiting inside the structure, but it had to be safer than what was coming for them. As they reached the door, Kor turned to her one last time. Get ready, he said. The real fight begins now. The man took a step forward, his gaze locked on her. The name is Kor, he said, his voice low and serious. And you have no idea what you're up against. The heavy metal doors of the structure slammed shut behind them with a loud clang, sealing them inside. The noise echoed in the dark, empty space, and for a moment, all Selena could hear was the pounding of her heart and the shallow breath she took in the cold, stale air. The jungle outside felt like a world away now, the sounds of the creature, and whatever was chasing them muted by the thick walls of the ancient building. Kor moved swiftly, his steps echoing through the metal corridors. His presence was unsettling, but Selena had to admit she was starting to rely on his cold, calculating nature. He seemed to know exactly what needed to be done. She looked around the dimly lit room they had entered. The walls were made of cold, unfeeling metal, covered in strange, alien symbols that glowed faintly in the shadows. Everything about this place was unfamiliar, even more so than the jungle outside. There were no signs of life here. No people, no animals, just the silence of abandonment. "Where are we?" Selena asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kor didn't answer right away. Instead, he continued moving, checking every corner, every door, with practiced precision. He was clearly on edge, and Selena couldn't blame him. Whatever was coming for them was close. "This is a relic," Kor finally spoke, his voice low, almost reverent. "An ancient stronghold from an era long before the galaxy was what it is today. The people who built this were once powerful, but now they're gone. They left behind a warning, but no one ever understood it." Selena frowned. She had never heard of this place, not in any of the training she had received. A warning? What kind of warning? Kor turned to face her, his expression grim. "The kind you don't ignore. The kind that could destroy everything if it's left unchecked." Selena swallowed, her throat dry. She wanted to ask more questions, to understand what Kor was talking about. But before she could, a loud crash reverberated through the metal walls. It wasn't distant this time. The creature was already inside the stronghold. She could hear its claws scraping against the cold floor, its growls vibrating through the walls. "Get to cover," Kor ordered, his voice sharp. He didn't wait for her to respond before he sprinted toward one of the hallways that led deeper into the structure. Selena hesitated for only a moment, then followed him, adrenaline flooding her veins. The sound of the creature's footsteps was growing louder, closer. She could feel the heat of its breath against her skin, as if it were right behind her. Panic began to set in, but she pushed it away, focusing on Kor's lead. They moved through the narrow, darkened corridors, every step heavy with the fear of being caught. The structure felt alive, as though it were shifting and changing around them, guiding them deeper into its bowels. The further they went, the colder it became, the air thicker with the sense of something ancient watching them. It was almost as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Kor led them to a large chamber, and Selena felt a chill crawl up her spine as they entered. The room was vast, far larger than anything she had seen in the rest of the structure. In the center, a massive cylindrical pillar stretched from the floor to the ceiling, covered in the same glowing symbols that marked the walls. The air around it hummed with an energy Selena could feel in her bones. This place wasn't just a safe house. It was something else, something more dangerous. Without a word, Kor gestured for her to follow him toward the pillar. He stopped at a console embedded into the floor, covered in more of the strange symbols. He worked quickly, pressing buttons and adjusting dials with precision, as though he had done this 1,000 times before. "What is this place?" Selena asked again, her voice trembling slightly. "This is the heart of the relic," Kor explained, his tone focused, almost reverent. "It's a key to something much bigger, and it's why they're after you." Selena's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, they're after me?" Kor didn't look at her as he worked, but his words were clear, cutting through the tension like a blade. "The mark on your arm isn't just a symbol of death. It's a symbol of your potential. You were chosen, not by chance, but because of what you carry, the power inside you." Selena recoiled slightly, shaking her head. "I don't carry any power. I'm just a soldier." Kor paused for a moment, his fingers hovering over the console. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost as though he was explaining something delicate. "You don't understand yet, but you will. The mark is a link to the greatest weapon this galaxy has ever known. And those who created the weapon, They want it back. A heavy silence filled the room. Selena's mind raced, trying to process what Cor had just said. A weapon. Something hidden inside her. It didn't make sense. Another loud crash shattered the silence, followed by the unmistakable sound of the creature's growl. It was getting closer, its claws clicking on the metal floor. Cor quickly moved toward a hidden panel in the wall, pulling it open to reveal a narrow passageway. "Get in," he commanded, his voice low and urgent. "We don't have much time." Selena didn't hesitate. She sprinted into the passage, following Cor as he led her through the winding, dark corridors. They couldn't afford to stop, couldn't afford to question any longer. She had no choice but to trust Cor, to follow him into whatever this was. The sounds of the creature's pursuit grew louder, but they were almost there, almost to safety. Cor stopped at the end of the passage, his hand on a large reinforced door. "Once we're inside, the real battle begins," Cor said, his voice steady. Selena took a deep breath, preparing herself for whatever was about to happen. She had no idea what Cor was leading her into, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't turn back now. The galaxy's fate, and her own, was hanging in the balance. With one final glance at Cor, she nodded. "Let's finish this." Cor opened the door. The door slid open with a low mechanical hum, revealing an expansive chamber beyond. The room was dimly lit, illuminated only by the flickering glow of various control panels and strange, glowing symbols embedded in the walls. The air felt thick with the hum of energy, and the cold, metallic smell of the place sent a shiver down Selena's spine. Cor stepped inside first, his eyes scanning the space with the precision of a predator. Selena followed closely behind, her breath shallow as she took in the surroundings. This was no ordinary hideout. It was far too advanced, too alien in design. This place wasn't meant for survival. It was meant for something much more significant. "Stay close," Cor murmured, his voice tense. "They'll be here soon." Selena barely had time to register his warning before the door slammed shut behind them, sealing them in. The chamber felt even more suffocating now, the walls closing in with every passing second. There was no turning back. They were deep inside, and whatever was coming for them was close. "Where are we?" Selena asked, her voice barely a whisper. "This is the heart of the weapon," Cor answered. "The very core of everything they've been trying to unlock. The power they've been searching for is right here." Selena's mind raced. She had no idea what he meant by the weapon, but she could feel the weight of it now. This place, this structure, it wasn't just a relic. It was something far more dangerous, something that could change everything. Before she could ask more, the sound of movement from the far end of the room caught her attention. There, silhouetted in the dim light, she saw figures emerging from the shadows. The creatures from the jungle, the ones that had been chasing them, were here. And this time, they weren't alone. "Get to cover," Cor ordered, his voice sharp as a blade. Without hesitation, he bolted to the side of the room, disappearing into the shadows. Selena's heart raced, and she instinctively reached for her weapon. But there was no time. The creatures were coming faster now, their growls growing louder, echoing through the chamber. Her instincts kicked in. She ducked behind a large console, her breath coming in quick bursts. The sounds of the creatures' footsteps grew louder as they entered the room. There were at least 5 of them. Large, menacing creatures with glowing red eyes, their claws scraping against the metal floor as they moved. Selena's hand trembled slightly as she gripped her blade. She could hear Cor's voice in her mind. "Survival isn't enough. You have to fight back." She peeked over the console, watching as the creatures scanned the room, their eyes glowing in the dim light. They were intelligent, too intelligent for simple beasts. They were looking for something, or someone, and Selena knew they wouldn't stop until they found her. "Stay down." Cor's voice came from the shadows. He was positioning himself, preparing for an attack. Selena gripped her weapon tighter. She had to survive. She had to fight back. But she wasn't sure she was ready. These creatures were unlike anything she had ever faced. She needed Core's help, but she couldn't wait. The creatures were getting closer. She waited for the perfect moment. When one of the creatures moved closer to her hiding spot, Selena made her move. She leaped out from behind the console, charging at the creature with her blade raised. The creature let out a surprised hiss as she drove the blade deep into its side. It staggered back, growling in pain, but it wasn't finished. Its eyes glowed brighter, and with a swipe of its claws, it slashed at her. She barely managed to dodge, rolling to the side to avoid the deadly swipe. But the creature wasn't alone. Another one lunged at her from the other side. She barely had time to react before Core appeared from the shadows, moving with inhuman speed. He tackled the creature to the ground, his blade flashing through the air as he sliced through its neck with a single, swift motion. The creature let out a final screech before it fell silent. Selena didn't have time to process what had just happened. She quickly regained her footing, her eyes scanning the room for the remaining threats. Core was already moving to take on another creature, his combat skills on display as he effortlessly dodged its attacks and struck back with lethal precision. "Stay focused," Core called out to her. "There's more coming." Selena nodded, determination hardening in her chest. She couldn't afford to be afraid anymore. She had to fight, had to prove to herself that she could survive. She watched Core, mimicking his movements, studying how he attacked, how he defended. There was no room for mistakes. Another creature lunged at her, but this time Selena was ready. She ducked under its swipe, her blade flashing as she slashed at its underbelly. It howled in pain, staggering back, but it wasn't finished yet. It reared up, its claws extended, ready to strike. But before it could reach her, Core was there, his sword piercing through the creature's chest. It crumpled to the floor, dead before it could make another move. The room fell silent. Selena took a deep breath, trying to steady her shaking hands. She had done it. She had fought back. But the victory felt hollow. There were more of them out there, and this was only the beginning. "Come on," Core said, his voice steady, despite the battle they had just fought. "We have to move. There's no time to waste." Selena followed him, her heart still racing from the fight. The chamber was eerily quiet now, but she knew they couldn't afford to relax. They had survived this encounter, but there were bigger threats waiting for them. And this was just the start. The weapon was still out there, hidden somewhere in this ancient structure, and she was the key. The echoes of their footsteps seemed too loud in the silence that followed the battle. Selena's heart was still pounding, her hands flick with sweat as she followed Core through the darkened corridors. The creatures were dead, but the real fight was far from over. Every corner of this place felt like a trap, every hallway a new challenge. They moved quickly, but Selena couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The walls of the stronghold were too still, too quiet, and it unsettled her. This wasn't just a place of war. It felt like a tomb, abandoned yet filled with an oppressive, suffocating presence. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice low, barely more than a whisper. Core didn't answer right away. His eyes were scanning their surroundings, his every movement sharp and precise. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but tense. "We're getting closer to the core, the heart of the weapon." Selena frowned. The weapon again. The thing that had brought her here. The reason she had that strange mark on her arm. She had thought it was just some military experiment at first, but now she wasn't so sure. There was something more to this. The mark, the strange creatures, the feeling that someone or something was pulling the strings. It was all connected. "Why me?" she asked, her voice betraying the frustration she felt. "Why am I the key? What's inside me?" Core glanced at her, his face unreadable. "It's not just inside you. It's you. The mark is a signal, a link. You were chosen, but not just by anyone. By the creators of the weapon. They believed that only you could unlock it, only you could activate it. Selena's mind raced as they continued down the winding corridors. Activated. What does that even mean? What happens if I unlock it? Core's pace didn't falter, but his expression tightened. The weapon is more than just a tool. It's a force, a power capable of reshaping entire galaxies. If you activate it, you can control it. But it won't be easy. It will fight you every step of the way. Selena didn't know whether to feel terrified or intrigued. She had always thought of herself as a soldier, trained, disciplined, ready for any challenge. But this was beyond her understanding. A power like the one Core spoke of could destroy everything. And if it was inside her, could she control it? Or would it control her? The further they went, the more the air around them seemed to vibrate with a low humming energy. The walls, the floors, even the ceiling, everything seemed to be alive, pulsating with a strange force. The glow from the symbols grew brighter as they entered a large circular chamber at the heart of the stronghold. In the center of the room stood a massive structure, towering above them. It was like a monument to something ancient, a mix of metal and stone, carved with the same glowing symbols that adorned the walls. At the base of the structure, a large circular indentation seemed to pulse with a dark energy. "This is it," Core said, his voice barely above a whisper. He stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the structure. "This is the core." Selena stared at the structure, feeling a pull deep within her chest, like something inside her was calling to it. She stepped forward, almost against her will. Her hand trembled as she reached out to touch the glowing symbols on the structure. As soon as her fingers made contact, a surge of energy shot through her, making her gasp in shock. The room around them seemed to shift, the walls warping as though they were bending to the will of the structure. A low guttural sound filled the air, like a distant roar, echoing from deep within the core. "What is that?" Selena asked, fear creeping into her voice. Core's expression was tense, his eyes wide as he stared at her. "You're activating it. You're starting to awaken the weapon." Selena jerked her hand back, but it was too late. The structure began to hum louder, its symbols glowing brighter, and a wave of energy surged outward, engulfing the room. Selena felt her body jerk forward, as if being pulled by an invisible force. She tried to resist, but the energy was too strong. It felt like it was inside her, coursing through her veins, making her heart race. She stumbled back, gasping for breath. The world around her seemed to spin, the air thick with power. She could feel it, the weapon, awakening inside her. It wasn't just a tool. It was a living, breathing force, and it was beginning to take control. "No," she cried out, shaking her head as if to shake off the feeling. "I don't want this. I don't want to control it." But the energy continued to surge, and the roar from deep within the core grew louder, closer. She could feel the weapon, the power inside her, stretching and reaching for her very soul. She could hear its whispers, promises of unimaginable power, of destruction, of control. Core rushed to her side, grabbing her by the shoulders and shaking her. "You have to fight it, Selena. You have to resist. If you give in now, it will consume you. And then there will be nothing left of you, nothing left of anyone." But the force inside her was relentless. She couldn't escape it. It was like drowning in a sea of pure power, and no matter how hard she fought, it dragged her deeper. She felt her knees buckle beneath her, and for a moment, everything went dark. The darkness around Selena felt suffocating, a thick fog that swallowed every ounce of light and hope. Her body trembled as the surge of energy continued to course through her, her veins burning with the intensity of it. Her heart hammered against her chest, its rhythm no longer her own. It felt like the very air had turned to liquid metal, heavy and suffocating. Selena gasped for breath, her mind a blur of confusion and fear. The whispers were louder now. Promises, commands, urges. They swirled in her head, urging her to embrace the power, to wield it and reshape everything. But every instinct screamed at her to resist. Core's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and desperate. "Selena, listen to me. You can still fight it. You're stronger than this. Don't let it take you." His words seemed distant, muffled by the roar of the energy inside her. She looked up, her vision blurred, and saw him standing a few steps away, his face tense with worry and determination. But his eyes were filled with something else now. Respect, fear, and something else she couldn't quite name. Selena tried to stand, but her legs refused to obey, her body shaking uncontrollably. The weapon, the force inside her, was too strong, too overwhelming. It was like being caught in a storm, unable to escape the crashing waves of power. But then a thought flickered in her mind. What if this wasn't just a curse? What if this power could be something else? She remembered her training, the lessons she had learned as a soldier, how to fight not just with strength, but with willpower, with mind over matter. She wasn't just a weapon to be used. She was the one in control. She had to be. With a deep, shuddering breath, Selena focused all her strength, all her will, into one thought. I am not this power. I am stronger than it. The energy pulsed violently in response, as if it could sense her resistance. The roar inside her grew louder, the whispers turned to screams. It was pushing, forcing, trying to swallow her whole. But Selena's resolve was unshakable now. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling but fierce. "I won't let you take me." She pressed her hands to her chest, trying to center herself, trying to remember who she was, who she had always been. Her pulse slowed, her breathing steadied. The weapon inside her felt like a fire, but now she had to be the water. She had to cool it down, control it. The whispers turned to growls, and for a moment, it felt as if the power would tear her apart. But just when it seemed like it would break her, she pushed back harder. She reached deep inside herself and found something she hadn't realized she still had: her humanity, her heart, her soul, the very things that made her more than a weapon. With a final forceful cry, she focused her energy and forced the power back down. The weapon inside her roared one last time, but it was a scream of frustration, not triumph. And then, silence. The room felt still again. The energy that had overwhelmed her seemed to recede, like a wave pulling back from the shore. The pulsating glow from the structure dimmed, and the air around her was no longer thick with the weight of power. Selena collapsed to her knees, her body trembling as the last of the energy left her. She felt drained, empty, but at the same time, free. She had done it. She had fought back. Core rushed to her side, his hands on her shoulders as he knelt beside her. His expression was one of awe, but also concern. "You did it," he said, his voice soft. "You controlled it." Selena nodded weakly, her vision still blurry. She could feel the remnants of the weapon deep inside her, but it was no longer a threat. It was a part of her now, something she could wield if she chose to, but something she would never let define her. She was not just a tool, not a weapon to be used. She was more than that. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she looked up at Core, meeting his gaze. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Core looked around the chamber, his eyes filled with uncertainty. Now we stop this. We destroy the core. We make sure the weapon never falls into the wrong hands." Selena's strength was returning, bit by bit, as she rose to her feet with Core's help. The room was quiet now, the danger gone, but the weight of what they had just done, what she had just done, was far from over. The weapon was still inside her, and there were more battles ahead. But for now, for this moment, they had won. Together, they approached the center of the room, where the core still hummed softly. The weapon was powerful, but it could be destroyed, and that was what they would do, destroy it, once and for all. As Selena stepped forward, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. She wasn't the tool of destruction that had been thrust upon her. She was the one in control. And now, she would decide the future. With one final decisive step, Selena activated the core's self-destruct mechanism. The chamber began to shake, the walls rattling as the energy that had once controlled her began to unravel. Core stepped back, his expression one of respect, and as the core began to disintegrate, they both stood in silence, knowing that they had stopped a power that could have destroyed everything. The weapon was no more, and Selena, she had conquered it.